O Quatam Satlam, Ol Nomol Quitstomot at the Quile. Thank you, Creator, for bringing us here today. Amos Quitkata Watsot, Watas Amos Qualiwan, Watas Amos Tutewan. And may we all come together with good minds, good heart, and good spirit. Latlo e quums kata watsot, quum stetium, eim shishalh. May we also work together as one and be strong as shishalh people. O quatam satlam, ol nomolch quim siamat tims qualiwan at the quile. Thank you, Creator, for giving us the strength to accomplish the things we have in mind for today. O quatam satlam, ol nomolch quis tomot at the quile. Thank you, Creator, for putting a blessing on everyone here today. Ol nomolch Chalap to Ukmasiyaya. Thank you, my friends and relatives.
James Noel Paul, Regiment Seaforth Highlanders, Company A. His parents, Noel Paul and Anne Isidore. He was born September 11th, 1921. In 1939, at the outbreak of the war, James volunteered for the Royal Canadian Air Force and trained as a Lancaster bomber tail gunner. Because the Air Force did not send native airmen overseas, Jim was given the honorable discharge. When he returned to BC, he was told he could serve the Army overseas if he gave up his native status. Jim then volunteered for the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada and entered the fierce fighting in 1943 on Ortona, Sicily, with the Seaforth Highlanders and the Princess Patricia Regiment. In Germany, shrapnel tore a piece from his right hand and arm. Flesh from his leg was removed to patch his arm. Jim returned to Germany and continued fighting once he had healed. He remained with the Allied occupation force and in colony until he returned home in 1948. After the war, Jim worked as a prison guard at Ocala for 4 years. He returned to logging until 1965, then went into construction until he retired in 1985. Jim finally had his native status returned to him in 1991. Jim returned to Shishalh during his retirement years, where he became very involved with the shishalh language program. The Royal Canadian Air Force and the United States Air Force are partners in protecting continental airspace under the North American Airspace Defense Command. The Royal Canadian Air Force traces its history to the Canadian Air Force, which was formed in 1920. The RCAF reached peak strength of 250,000 all ranks in January 1944. About 13,000 RCAF personnel were killed while on operations or died as prisoners in war.
Air Force, a goodly chunk of the British nighttime raiders learned their trade in Canada because it was a safe place to train people, get them all dialed in on what they had to do. Then they ferried their planes across and went and did what they were trained to do.
Private James Alex Paul, Regiment 2nd Canadian Scouts, Seaforth Highlanders. His parents was Alex Paul and Elizabeth Foster, born July 16th, 1917. He passed away October 29th, 1973 in Vancouver, BC. James enlisted in the Army and proudly served his country and his people. After the war, James resided in Vancouver. Seymour Johnson, Regiment Seaforth Highlanders. Medals: Sam was awarded the 1939-45 Star, the France and Germany Star, and War Medal 1939-45, and the Canadian Volunteer Service Medal. His parents, Alfred Johnson and Anne Julius, He was born February 15th, 1920. He married Joanne August. Sam was a very decorated World War II veteran who had spent time in the German prison of war camp. He married Joanne August and spent the remainder of his life in Shishalh. Second World War medals. The following campaign stars medals were instituted in recognition of service in the Second World War and are worn in the following order. The 1939-45 star, the France and Germany star, the War Medal 1939-45, Private Wilfred John, Regiment Black Watch. Parents Chief Gasper John Hua and Agnes Alec, born January 11, 1912. Married Elizabeth Douglas, passed away March 13, 1989. Before the war, Wilfred was a fisherman, logger, and dedicated canoe puller. When the war broke out, Wilfred volunteered to serve his country. He was captured and survived for 2 years as a prisoner of war. After 2 years of duty, Wilfred returned home to Shishalh, married Elizabeth, and had the following children: Grace, Walter, Agnes, Wayne, Earl, Patrick, Marvin, Claudia, Daisy, and Anna. The Black Watch is the oldest Highland regiment in Canada. Service started in Montreal, January 31st, 1862. They were in the Boer War, World War I, World War II, Korean War, and has bolstered NATO operations in Europe. During World War I, 11,954 men fought and won 26 battle honors. 2,163 were killed and 6,014 were wounded. During World War II, Black Watch moved to northwestern Europe, where they participated in some 30 battles throughout France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany. By the end of the war, Black Watch regiments had won more than 200 battle honors.
Everybody that was anybody always wanted to serve with the watch. Very proud tradition. Never gave up ground if they absolutely didn't have to, and 9 times out of 10, if they had to give up ground, it was usually because there was no one left to defend it. They have a very proud tradition. And they have hard work, very loyal to a fault to one another. There weren't as many at that time when I went to that unit, but there were still a few, and those that were there were a very proud group. And it was an honor to serve. Yeah, that's a very dedicated group. One of the hardest working, hardest fighting. They were the ones that got called the ladies from hell, and they earned that. The Germans never wanted to mix up with them because they gave as good as they got, if not better.
Eugene Paul, Regiment, 2nd Canadian Scouts, C4th Highlanders. Parents Dave Paul, born September 22, 1924, married Myrtle Newman, passed away October 17, 1958. After serving in the Second World War, Eugene came home and entered the fishing industry. He had a gillnet boat, Raven. Eugene died at sea trying to save the lives of others. Bill, Willie Francis Johnson, Regiment C4th Highlanders. Parents, Policeman Paul and Martha Matta. Born January 1st, 1916, and married to Susan Commodore. Willie and Susan had the following children: Peggy, Clifford, Richard, Mikey, Dorothy, and Chas.